Are you thinking about becoming a vintage reseller either online, or perhaps you're thinking about starting an antique booth? And are you curious whether or not you can really make any money doing this type of work? My name is Julie and I am a vintage reseller. I do rent out an antique booth. Today I'm going to share with you my bookkeeping and my sales for the month of August. I am about a month behind in my bookkeeping, but I do hope to be able to share my September sales with you at least before the end of October. So that's a lofty goal for me. If you do this, I'm sure you will agree that the fun part is going out and sourcing items for your online shop or your antique booth. And the not so fun part is sitting down and doing the work to record your inventory and then to just get in your computer. And I guess I'm just not in love with sitting down at my computer anymore. I just love being out there sourcing items and then getting them ready and displaying them in my antique booth. So I guess that's my excuse for being over a month behind in my bookkeeping. But here are the real numbers. In August, I made $670.50. So this is clearly not enough to make a full-time income on, but it is enough to pay a couple of bills. And it is, of course, enough to encourage me to go back out thrifting and garage sailing and yard sailing and all those things and buy new stuff, right? That's the absolute funnest part. Now, this amount does include the 10% commission that I pay to the store on the top of every single purchase that I get. But it does not include the amount that I pay in rent. It also does not include the amount that I spent on each item. But I think you will see as I go through this video that I do make a really high profit margin on almost everything I sell. So I sort all of that out at the end of the year when I do my worksheet for my tax repair. That's when I really get down to the raw numbers of how much I spent on every single item. So for the month of August, I'm not going to share with you every single item that's sold just because I think it would make the video go a little bit too long. Every month, I always sell several Beanie Babies. I usually spend $1.11 on them plus tax, and they sell for $10. So in fact, one Sunday, my friend who was working the cash register, Shelly, she called and said, "You just sold 19 Beanie Babies to one person." So that was really awesome. That meant that was $190 that I made just from Beanie Babies that day, minus, of course, the 10% commission that I paid to the store and minus the amount that I spent on them, which wasn't that much. They're just $1.11 plus tax where I get them at Goodwill. So that was like the encouragement that I needed to go out and buy this display that I had seen that I really wanted at Hobby Lobby for my Beanie Babies, and it was like $85. So that was my splurge that I made on my booth this summer, was that I went and bought that display from Hobby Lobby, and it turned out really nice. I decided to share with you several things that sold that I thought were just like a good representation of the kinds of things that I'm into, and hopefully show more of a variety of the things that I put in my booth to sell. My booth does have a tendency to be very kitchen-y. I'm just really into vintage kitchenware. And when I go to source items, I head straight for the hard goods because it's just what I'm into. So the first thing I want to share with you is that these two Pfaltzgraph salt and pepper shakers in the pattern Tea Rose, they're the most adorable little bunnies. They sold, I paid $2.78 for the pair. They sold for $23.40. That does include the 10% commission that the store gets off the top of every item that I sell. So all of these prices, these sold prices, are going to include that 10% that the store takes. That was a very nice profit margin of 88% on these adorable bunnies. I see Pfaltzgraph everywhere. The Tea Rose, I think, is my favorite pattern, and I had never seen the bunnies before. They are just absolutely adorable. They're actually featured in a short that I did, so I will put the link to that short in the description for you so you can watch that too. Next up, 3 mid-century modern amber glasses. I just loved the shape of these. I really like mid-century modern. I like the clean lines and the simplicity of it. These were Duralex from France, and I paid just $1.17 a piece for these adorable glasses. I sold 3 of them to the same person for $9 each. So that was a very nice profit margin of 87% on these glasses. Okay, I sold 3 of these Delft Holland trivets to the same person. I paid $3.31 a piece for them, and each one sold for $14.40. That was a profit margin of 77% on these. It does take a while to move, but I've found that when people are into it, they will buy several pieces at one time, which is really nice. The next thing that I want to share with you was another piece of Pfaltzgraph in the Tea Rose pattern. This sold on a different day than the bunnies. So this large platter I paid $2.78 for, and it sold for $19.80 for a nice profit margin of 86%. Next up was this vintage red enamel teapot. I paid a little bit too much for it, clearly, at $5.45, but I just really liked that. Again, I liked that mid-century modern look of it. It sold for $19.80 for a profit margin of just 72%. So not great on the profit margin, but I still loved the piece. I loved the color, and clearly one of my customers loved it as well. Next up was a cute hand-painted donkey. It is Mexican pottery, and the brand is Tonala. It was $4.28, which was kind of a lot of money for such a tiny little figurine. But I guess whoever was doing the pricing realized that it was something special, and it was. It sold for $12, so I actually got $10.80 after the store took their $1.20. So that was a profit margin of 60%, which is not good compared to what I normally can get. But again, I have this little area where I have Mexican pottery, and it's mostly Tonala. And I just like to have things to put in that little corner of my display. So when I see something really nice, I'm willing to spend a little bit of money to get something special. I am a lover of cookbooks, and I just love them. I especially love when they have a really funky vintage cover on them. This one was just cute. It wasn't as funky as some of the covers I've seen. It was called the Complete Family Cookbook, and it's copyrighted 1970. It was $2.68 and sold for $12.60 for a profit margin of 78%. I have to be careful how many cookbooks that I buy because I will go overboard on cookbooks. And what I've found is that if I display them on a cookbook stand where people can actually see them, they will sell. But if I just put them on a bookcase where all that they can see is the spine of the book, it doesn't sell. So I have to be careful how many I buy. Or just, when I see a good one, put it on the cookbook stand. And then because my antique booth is 2 hours away from where I live, I can't be there all the time. I'm only there 2 days out of the month. I should mention that that's part of our rent, is that we are required to work 2 days per month at the store where we are assisting customers and running the cash register, and we don't get paid for those 2 days. So it's almost like a co-op. We all take turns working, and then the owner of the store does not have to pay people an hourly wage to work. So basically, it's part of our rent is those 2 required work days. So what I've done is my friends who work there and are there all the time because they live there, I'll just ask them, hey, if you see that there's no cookbook on my cookbook stand, will you please just grab one off of the bookshelf and place it there? And they're happy to do that for me. So it's just a fun family of folks that I work with, and I enjoy it all so very much. I get a lot of enjoyment out of the store, the customers, and the other antique dealers, and that is an aspect that would be missing for me if I sold online. So just one thing to consider. I had this piece forever, like years. Very pretty. was very Victorian looking. The company was Abington. It was beautiful with no problems with the pattern, no problems with the gold trim. And it was a console bowl, so you could put it on like a sofa table and it would look really nice, or you could use it as a serving dish in your kitchen. It was just flowery and it took a long time to sell. I also paid a lot for it. I paid $13.38 for it, and it sold finally after several years for $28.80. So that's my worst profit margin for the month of August, was this Abington China bowl. Just again, had it forever, and it was a poor profit margin, but it was really pretty, and it was just a really lovely shade of yellow, lovely flowers on it. I paid too much, but if I were to see one again for a lesser price, I'd pick up another one because it was special. I don't ever see these out shopping, and I don't think I've seen another one in our particular antique store. Last up, this was something that I had since I was in 4th grade when we all started playing the recorder in our music class. So I didn't buy this. My parents either bought it or the school supplied it. I'm not sure. So I don't know how much it cost, but it sold for $21.60. After being in the booth for kind of a while, I had a little bit of trouble displaying it, but I guess someone decided that they really liked it. It was definitely vintage, considering when I was in 4th grade, it was 1986, so it was a vintage Yamaha recorder. I do try pretty hard to make sure that everything in my booth is either vintage, antique, or handmade. I don't ever pretend something is vintage that is not vintage, though. And I do put crocheted items or other handiwork in my booth that either I've made or that other people have made, and I find out at yard sales or estate sales or something like that. So anyway, the Yamaha recorder was vintage, just like me. I had a t-shirt on the other day at work that said, it was something about a vintage car, and it said vintage classic on it, and my friends were like, "You're too young to be vintage." And I was like, no, I'm definitely vintage, and in fact I'm almost half of an antique, which I'm 49, so I'm almost 50, which is half of an antique, since an antique has to be 100 years old or older. I don't think I have any antiques in my booth. I'm much more drawn to vintage items. I'm much more drawn to 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and even 80s. Not so much like really old stuff, which is hard to find. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope that you found it valuable. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and in the comments section, please let me know if you could choose anything from this particular showcase of items. What would you choose? I'm curious what my viewers, what kind of things that they're into in terms of vintage and antiques. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video.